Oh, we got a good one this weekend, guys. Live from Ontario, we got Sean Strickland bringing the belt, putting it up against Dricus du Plessis. My partners over at DraftKings Sportsbook have got one incredible deal for all new customers. Download the DraftKings app right now, sign up using the promo code Sonnen, and you can bet just $5 on any of this weekend's fights. You will get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Combine multiple bets together from the same fight, like number of rounds, method of victory, for an even bigger payout. Remember, DraftKings is the only place where you can bet same fight parlays. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy. So click on the link below and download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. So I got a headline going over here. This is at MMA Fighting. This is written by the great Damon Martin. And it doesn't matter who writes an article. You get an article written by Damon Martin, you know you've got yourself a real article. Damon does a great job. The headline is, Dana White scoffs at Ronda Rousey, George St. Pierre, or Brock Lesnar returning for UFC 300. And you know what? Some of those are very interesting. Like, there is a belief, and I share it, that somebody is coming back. Somebody's coming out of retirement. Now, I only believe that because I've been told that there's going to be an aw shucks moment. Wow. Jaw-dropping. Something fell into your lap. These are expressions that were used. Well, if a guy's ranked in the top 10, he didn't fall into your lap. He was there all along. He's in the top 10. So it has to be a surprise, I think. I think that's what it means. And you could have an athlete from a cross promotion. Like, it doesn't have to be a retired athlete. It could be somebody that became available through one of the other promotions. I just don't know who that would be. Like, Kayla Harrison, Amanda Nunes is not some massively sought after fight. But to use an example. To use an example of the only potential female fight that it could be. And that is not a heavily sought after fight, but you would at least have the, okay, great, I didn't see that coming, fine, let's just move forward. You would have some degree of that. But you'd be resurrecting the 145-pound division, which, though it's never been talked about, and though we never actually spread its ashes, you might as well. 145 pounds does not exist anymore. Nobody has been signed, and nobody at that weight class that hasn't made it very clear to the decision makers, myself being one of them, that they can get to 135 pounds. We're just not re-signing. So even though we haven't told you there, I'm telling you now, we don't have 145 pounds anymore. So could we bring it in for one night? Yeah, we definitely could, but would we bring it in for that fight, which really isn't all that sought after or asked about in the first place? No, of course not. Okay, great. Let's look at George St. Pierre, because he was coming back, and George never really left, did he? I mean, if you follow George on social media, I mean, you want to talk about a guy, body beautiful, right? You don't just get those genetics. You don't get luck. You got to work your ass off. George St. Pierre is the most disciplined guy in the sport. George St. Pierre is the most disciplined guy in the history of the sport. And believe me, that pains me to say that. That's the title that I want. That's the title that I want for myself. I've never had a drop of alcohol. I mean, just for example, I lived in a sport where they called me an SHIT talker, and aside from spelling that word for you right now is the closest I've never used profanity, right? I mean, I was very disciplined, did everything right. But I still got to tell you, the most disciplined guy was George St. Pierre. George St. Pierre goes 5 days a month right now on nothing but water. Did you know that? Does a water diet for 5 days a month, every single month. Trains twice a day. And he was coming back for a grappling match. And they hadn't announced who the opponent was going to be yet. But it was leaning towards somebody along the lines of Kamaru Usman. They offered Khabib the match. Just to share with you, it was going to be somebody very hard and very difficult. And that was supposed to go down in December. So the belief that it could be George St. Pierre stepping in and coming back, not to mention understanding there's 2 different weight classes that he could do it. He was the unbeaten king at 170. He was the unbeaten king at 185. There's 2 different weight classes. That's just not a direction that they're going to go. The fighter that they wanted on the card was Conor McGregor. They couldn't get Conor because of the 180-day misinterpreted rule by USADA, but the breakup with USADA, they just thought, you know what, let's just do what USADA requests. Instead of testing that theory, let's just do what they requested. But that's not only going to apply to Conor, that's going to apply to anybody coming back. That's where it would eliminate all of your George Masvidals and all of your Nate and or Nick Diaz's. That would eliminate your Conor McGregor, but it would also eliminate all of your Ronda Rouseys of the world and all of your George St. Pierre's. Everybody would fall into that same scope if they weren't tested for the 6 months. And if they didn't meet the requested requirement of USADA. Now, guys, I'm well aware that in this space, we're going to follow whatever rules we make up as we go. I'm well aware of that. So you could bring in somebody else and say, well, that wasn't specifically Conor McGregor. There's games that you could play. I'm just not going to predict that you're going to do them. And then you've got Brock Lesnar, right? I mean, one thing that Damon Martin had to write about here, he had to write about that it specifically wasn't George. So I just told you why it's not George. It's not George for the same reason that it's not Conor, right? But I also explained to you that I do understand why you would bring that up. It's not Khabib because it's just not Khabib. That one's disappointing. And how you want to rectify that with Javier Mendez and his statements, look, it was out of context. It just was. I thought Coach Mendez did a great job of clearing that up. It's not Ronda Rousey. It's just not Ronda Rousey. Like, don't forget, Ronda didn't leave the sport because she wanted to. Like, that's one thing about somebody returning. When you have a rumor of Brock who left on a victory, if you have a rumor of St. Pierre who left as the champion, if you have a rumor of Amanda Nunes coming back, who is the queen of two different divisions, that's very different than having somebody like Ronda who didn't leave on their own accord, right? If you, there's a difference in leaving the business and getting thrown out of the business. And then Brock Lesnar, just to pay that one off for you. Brock is suspended in Nevada. Brock cannot get licensed. Brock not only is suspended and cannot get licensed and would have to do the suspension that they gave him, there's also fines and interest and other requirements that would have to be looked at. Now, that is the most crooked commission in the world. Believe if there's any commission that could get a guy who's been suspended back to business, it is Nevada, but they're not. They're just not doing that. It's none of those guys, and Dana has the right to scoff at it. And quite frankly, if you pay attention to the industry and you're out there making guesses, and you guessed any of those, you're a little bit stupid.